Hi, welcome to Cosmic and Body Horror. In this channel we discuss content related to Lovecraft horror, Cthulhu mythos and body horror. I upload videos on a daily basis, so before we get started, if I could ask you for a thumbs up at some point during this video if you enjoyed the content, please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks for your support. SCP-3862 The Gentleman Karcist by Malice Graves. SCP-3862 was first acquired by the Foundation in 1952, during the renovation of the Palace of Santos, the former seat of the House of Abrantes, and the current French Embassy in Lisbon, Portugal. While the palace had been used for some time by the French government as a de facto embassy, it was formally acquired by France in 1909, and by 1951 it was in need of major renovation to update the internal facilities as well as repair to several structural elements. It was during this renovation that the first hidden entrance to a small chapel was discovered in what had once been the bedchamber of the Marquesa Eleanore Lancastre e Tavora. Upon further investigation, an additional hidden entrance and hallway was discovered that connected the chapel to a guest bedroom now believed to have been occupied by a member of the French diplomatic mission to Portugal, Sir Lucien Dutoit. Very little was documented about the initial discovery of this chapel and its contents. The workers and staff assigned to the renovation of that area were all exposed to the pathogenic contagion associated with SCP-3862, and quickly succumbed to rapid-onset bacterial infection. Due to the anomalous attributes associated with this disease and the contents of the chapel itself, the Foundation was alerted by assets embedded in the consulate staff, and the embassy was immediately placed under quarantine. It is unclear how the initial outbreak was contained. Many of the Foundation personnel assigned to the acquisition of SCP-3862 were also exposed to SCP-3862-Epsilon and subsequently expired. Not knowing the extent of contamination, successor personnel destroyed all the reports and research material originally associated with SCP-3862. While this was apparently successful in containing the outbreak of SCP-3862-Epsilon, the majority of the information surrounding the acquisition of SCP-3862 and the location wherein it was found was lost. Next part of the SCP file tells us of the nature of SCP-3862. It reads: SCP-3862 collectively refers to three separate objects, previously owned by the Marquesa de Abrantes, Eleanore de Piedade de Lancastre e Tavora, and her paramour, Sir Lucien Dutoit. SCP-3862-A, a Victorian-era letterbox inlaid with mother-of-pearl and lacquered with a solution that includes significant traces of human blood. SCP-3862-B, an ornate wall sconce grown from human bone. SCP-3862-C, an ornate side table carved from a keratin-like substance. All three objects, as well as the letters contained in SCP-3862-A, are hosts to two previously unknown and unique strains of the Vibrio vulnificus bacteria that, when combined with each other, manifest in a virulent pathogenic contagion designated SCP-3862-Epsilon. This bacterial manifestation is highly resistant to all commonly known antimicrobial therapies, and is considered biologically immortal. It is to be noted that SCP-3862-Epsilon only becomes active when both strains are present. SCP-3862 is secured in 3 biological containment lockers in the Antiquities Vault at Site-54. Under no circumstances are all 3 objects to be studied together without prior written approval by the current HMCL supervisor or the current site director. All testing events should be conducted in a Class A sterile laboratory, and researchers involved must undergo thorough decontamination procedures after being exposed to any of the SCP-3862 objects. In the event of a containment breach, Site-54 will enter immediate biocontamination lockdown, and all personnel must present immediately at the closest decontamination facility to prevent the spread of SCP-3862-Epsilon. The unofficial disinformation campaign originally conceived by the Portuguese aristocracy was largely successful in removing all mention of the relationship between Eleanore Tavora and Lucien Dutoit. And this campaign is currently being maintained by the Foundation and its assets. An AI has been tasked with monitoring web traffic and academic correspondence for references to the Marquesa de Abrantes and her relationships. Any mention of Lucien Dutoit is to be immediately tagged and sent to the current SCP-3862 head researcher for review. Research into SCP-3862 has recommenced under the direction of Dr. Jamie Forrester. Next, the file shows us two internal SCP Foundation memorandum concerning research on SCP-3862. The first one reads: From Dr. Jamie Forrester to Site Director Andreas Gotts. February 12, 2013. Request to commence study of SCP-3862 and related objects. Given Dr. Judith Lowe's recent report on the increase in both proto- and neo-sarkic activities, we need to re-evaluate our stance on the study of SCP-3862. The articles in question are clearly sarkic in origin, and the study of their nature may shed additional light on the activities of any number of the European neo-sarkic cults during the Victorian era. As of now, we know precious little about the ambitions and goals of the neo-sarkic group of interest. As their influence in both the anomalous and non-anomalous world grows, it becomes increasingly incumbent upon the Foundation to not only learn as much as we possibly can, but also to devise ways to blunt the impact of whatever it is they are planning. I believe that the information contained within the letters from someone who was obviously a high-ranking member in neo-sarkic society at the time will shed some light on the genesis of whatever their current ambitions might be. Remember, the Karcists all think incredibly long-term. Their ability to become effectively immortal gives them both patience and the drive to create and achieve very far-reaching goals. As of now, we don't even have a clue what those might be, and we need to do whatever we can to ensure that their impact on normalcy is as minimal as possible. Please see my attached proposal for reopening research into SCP-3862. I have included all current data on the Sigma pathogen, as well as the work done on negating the spread of the contagion. Respectfully, Dr. Jamie Forrester, Senior Researcher, Department of History, Religious Group of Interest, Threat Analysis. The second addendum is from Dr. Andreas Gotts replying to Dr. Jamie Forrester request. It reads: Request granted. You give a convincing argument, and the threat analysis provided by Dr. Lowe only strengthens your position. Please confer with Dr. Juliette Messier in Medical for devising a revision to the containment procedures to cover any potential breach by the Sigma contagion. Dr. Andreas Gotts, Site Director, Site 54. Next is an addendum that tells us about the history of Eleanore de Piedade de Lancastre y Tavora, 8th Marquesa de Abrantes, also 15th Countess of Panaguio and 11th Countess of Vila Nova de Portimão. Birth January 19, 1834. Death is presently unknown. First child of Pedro Maria de Piedade de Lancastre Almeida Sameneses 1816 to 1847. 7th Marquesa de Abrantes. Ascended to the peerage upon the death of her father in 1847, though the majority of her responsibilities were handled by her uncle, João Maria de Piedade de Lancastre y Tavora. The official purpose of the regency was due to her age at the time of ascension, and all official records state that his regency was continued after her majority due to her poor health. João Maria was never officially confirmed as the 8th Marquesa, though most official records state his title as such regardless. It is now believed that Eleanor's actual confirmation as the 8th Marquesa was suppressed primarily as a result of the scandal surrounding her relationship with the disgraced French nobleman Lucien Dutoit. It is interesting to note, however, that she is mentioned in numerous non-official accounts as having once been quite the socialite. At one point, it was rumored that her uncle was in negotiations to have her married to Lord Aberdeen, a prominent member of the British peerage, though this never came to fruition. Regardless, official documents seem to contradict these accounts, claiming instead that she was a recluse and remained so due to her poor health. What is known, through the letters found in SCP-3862-A, is that the Marquesa traveled to England in May of 1851, and it was there that she met Lucien Dutoit at a social event held to celebrate the birthday of Queen Victoria. We then find a letter from Lucien Dutoit to Eleanore. It reads, May 19, 1851. Eleanore, it is with the utmost excitement, indeed, that I must express my joy at having had the true pleasure of meeting such an esteemed and yet alluring lady such as yourself. I admit that I found myself at a loss of words to adequately express myself upon our first meeting, though as the evening wore on, I was unable to contain my adoration for your most exquisite company. I truly hope that the attention that I lavished upon you was not unwelcome, as that evening spent with you was and is one that I cannot but cherish as one of my most enjoyable yet spent in this dark country. Your grace and eloquence spake directly to my heart, and I have found myself returning again and again in my mind to your cunning words and musical laughter. Would that I could but hear them both again, over and over, until they are all the sounds my ears can hear. Perhaps, if you would be so inclined, we can continue to converse through this medium. Though I fear that no matter how I agonize over the page, my own words will remain but a shadow of the way I wish to express myself. I wish nothing more than to devote myself entirely to the pursuit of your affection, for while our time together was short, I now see that there is nothing more in this world that can compare to the ecstasy of your smile and the warmth of your attention. Awaiting your answer, I remain, with respectful affection, ever yours, Lucien. Next addendum is Eleanore replying to Lucien. It reads, June 1, 1851. My gallant Sir Lucien, it was with great regret that I pulled myself from your touch when finally we had to part. I was truly overjoyed to receive your request to write to me, and that was but a pale candle next to the glorious sunrise of joy I experienced when I realized I had received the actualization of your request. I read and reread your missive with ever-increasing excitement, and my ladies had to restrain me from heading off immediately to pen my response. I curse now that there is such distance between us, for even with the modernity of conveyance, I cannot live with the time that must lapse between reading your words. Be sure to write back to me the very day that you receive this, for even a small time to wait is agony within my breast. Forever I remain, breathless with anticipation at your reply. Entirely yours, Eleanore. Next addendum is the history of Lucien Dutoit, officier, Légion d'honneur. Also Karcist, Société de la Fleur Sanglante or Society of the Bloody Flower. It reads, Birth unknown, death unknown. Almost nothing is known about Dutoit outside of the SCP-3862 letters. All mention of him was expunged from French diplomatic records at the request of the Portuguese government. It is this very lack of available information that suggests that the identity of Lucien Dutoit is just one of many such personas assumed by this individual. What is known, and has been confirmed through various outside sources, is that Dutoit is the identity used by the Karcist of the neo-sarkic cult Société de la Fleur Sanglante, Society of the Bloody Flower. It is believed that Dutoit is the nom de guerre assumed by the Karcist after the fall of the July monarchy in 1848. Our understanding as to why Dutoit was positioned at the British court via the French diplomatic corps is purely conjecture. Through his letters, we can assume that he was attempting to gain leverage amongst the British aristocracy in a hope to shift his flagging power base in France, and either his attempts to do so were blocked by an unknown outside entity, or he simply found that shifting to Portugal was a much more appetizing prospect. Either way, the Société did make the move to Portugal, and Dutoit utilized his connection with the Marquesa to secure a French diplomatic residency at the Palace of Santos. It is unclear how much of that delegation was made up of members of his Société, but the impact of Dutoit shifting to Lisbon did ultimately result in the Palace of Santos eventually becoming the permanent French embassy in Portugal. We then find another letter from Lucien Dutoit to Eleanore. It reads, June 17, 1852. Eleanore, these past few months have flown by in a flurry of your letters. The distaste I experience at returning to my work with the boorish louts that pretend at grace is only heightened by the heights of ecstasy I experience when I think to the words held upon the pages I carry with me always near to my heart. Indeed, I have taken to carrying your letters in the breast pocket of my coat, and their scent has raised more than a few eyebrows when I walk into the chambers of Parliament. I care not for their irrelevant disapproval, even less now that I have such an excellent thing to share with you. I admit I am breathless still from my running here from my meeting with Count Kolonowski, for I could not bear to merely walk in my excitement. Indeed, it is difficult to even write this, for my hand shakes so, for I am also afraid that to actually put pen to paper with my news it will fade away to nothing, a mere phantasm of hope. Nay, I must write it, for to write it will certainly mean that our greatest wish has finally come to pass. Today, not 40 minutes ago, I was told that my request to Count Armand has been granted. Not only that, I am to join him in barely a fortnight hence, where we shall travel from Paris to take up residence at the Palace of Santos. I could barely restrain myself from leaping for joy when that ass Wolowski spoke to me of disbelief that Armand would lower himself to take up actual residence in a palace of the bourgeoisie. Regardless, it is with the most profound excitement that I can relay to you that our prayers have indeed been granted, and I shall be coming to stand at your side. May these days fly swiftly, for I hope to arrive within moments of the footman handing this letter to you. In eternal anticipation no longer, Lucien. Eleanore replies to him. The letter reads, August 1, 1852. My dearest love. There are not enough words in the entirety of the English language to express my longing for your immediate arrival. I detest the charade we must play in order for the whispers at court to not include the truth about us, for this language is so inelegant at times. Even so, that serves as nothing to dampen my spirits, for this letter will be waiting for you upon arrival. I know not how I will be able to maintain the decorum my uncle insists upon when face to face with the object of my affection. Just knowing that you are already within the borders of Lisbon brings me to true paroxysms of rapture. I feel as if I am floating, and I have been such since I first heard that you would be coming. I have ensured that you will be given the willow room for your own. The left sconce is the one that opens the way to the chamber I have set aside for us. I replaced the sconce in my own room with your gift, and this time when I caress its lovely stem, I shall be opening the way to you. I shall retire as soon as you have been welcomed, and I will await you there with bated breath, and dare I even say it, dampened thighs. With the weight of the universe suspended between heartbeats, I remain eternally yours, Eleanore. Next, the file shows an SCP Foundation internal memorandum. It reads, From Dr. Jamie Forrester to Site Director Andreas Gotts. June 6, 2013. Update on the research into SCP-3862. Our research into SCP-3862 has already yielded several important findings, primary among them the information on the Société de la Fleur Sanglante. We knew that there was a Sarkic cult involved in the July monarchy because that was one of the factors utilized by Her Majesty's Foundation for the secure containment of the Paranormal 3 to justify their involvement in that whole affair. Our records from the HMFSCP only referred to the cult as the Société, and now that we have the full name, we've been able to trace more of their movements through our connections to the library. Additionally, the SCP-3862- box itself is fairly non-anomalous aside from being made from human skin. We think that the DNA samples that we were able to get from the leather belonged to both Dutoit and the Marquesa, but the DNA itself was so damaged by the lacquering process that it is difficult to be certain. If it is, it could represent the missing element of SCP-3862-epsilon that we've been looking for. Perhaps Dr. Messier and her team can utilize it in synthesizing a vaccine, but that's only in the earliest stages at this point. Respectfully, Dr. Jamie Forrester, Head Researcher, SCP-3862. Then we find another letter from Lucien Dutoit. It reads: September 13, 1854. My Volutar. Your skill at the LIHQ has improved dramatically, and it is only fitting that you rise to my side as my Volutar. The Societe has blossomed here in Lisbon, and I have only you to thank for that. Your ardent and passionate embrace of Nalka has been inspiring, and it relieves my old heart to see someone as young as you show such incredible skill. Including you in my great work has proven to be of immense worth, and has been a source of tremendous joy. With you by my side, there is nothing that will stand between us and apotheosis. Our ascension will be an orgy of flesh, the purification of self through the bliss of orgasmic ecstasy. I long even now to run my fingers once again through the sodden folds of your viscera, to feel your moist heat spread across my flesh, to join as one inside of you. I shall rise into you, and through our union, we shall unleash a new dawn upon this world. Lucien. Lastly, a letter from Eleanore Tavora. This letter appears to be hastily written and is stained in multiple places with a dark substance that has retained a certain viscosity, despite the years it has been in containment. December 22, 1854. Master. You must flee. My pregnancy has not gone unnoticed, and João Maria is furious. We have been too lax in our precaution, and my uncle has gone to the vicar with his tale. You shall be cast out. I tremble at the thought of what the might of the church assembled against you will do, and I can do nothing but give you this warning and a single last gift. When I am done writing this, I shall use the remainder of my strength to ensure the birth of our child. She shall be a rising tide of our vengeance, and she will carry within her my soul, my hope for rebirth within your loving embrace. Teach her as you have taught me, love her as you have loved me, touch her as you have touched me, for she will be I. Not just I, but a better me, infused with your blessing, my dearest Lord. I shall leave her, along with this and all our other letters in our chapel. I only wish that I could be there to see you and her together, with these eyes, that shall soon grow empty and vacant without my soul to light their lamps. In hopes for a true eternity, your Eleanore. We then find a report about SCP-3862-B. It reads: Researcher, Dr. Jamie Forrester, Dr. Samira Golzer, assisting. September 12, 2013. Creation date, 1853. Physical description. Object is a two-candle wall sconce, displayed in an elaborate depiction of nature, including various flowers, leaves, and structural elements. Primary is the inclusion of a small white bird, possibly a dove. Medium, human bone, lacquer, gold leaf 24 karat. Dimensions 66. 4 centimeters tall, 25. 38 centimeters wide, 15. 22 centimeters deep. Object location, Antiquities Vault, Site 54. Notes of interest is that the entire structure appears to have been grown, as opposed to carved. Various imaging techniques were utilized to determine if this was new growth bone, as is often the case in sarkic anatomical structures, or if this was created using pre-existing structures from a donor. What was found was that this was old-growth bone, as signified by typical calcium density markers that have been previously identified as restructured growth typically found in the skeletal structures of biologically immortal entities. Additionally, DNA sample analysis proves that this is a match to the samples belonging to one of the individuals associated with SCP-3862-A. It is the conclusion of the research team that SCP-3862-B is an object of art created by Lucien Dutoit, from his own body. Furthermore, it represents the use of pre-existing bone structure, primarily taken from the thoracic cage. Lastly is the SCP-3862 final report. It reads: From Site Director Andreas Gottsam to the 05 and Jonathan DeCroix, Director, Ethics Committee. April 3, 2015. SCP-3862 Final Report. It is with a fair amount of personal regret that I must inform you of the passing of Dr. Jamie Forrester. While the results of his research have forwarded our understanding of neo-sarkicism, I am uncertain if the loss of such a brilliant researcher is commensurate with the information gained. While such losses are often inevitable in the work that we have sworn ourselves to, it is still something that we strive to prevent wherever possible. In this instance, it was my decision to allow reopening the research into SCP-3862 that ultimately led to Dr. Forrester's untimely and rather grisly end. Nonetheless, we now know that the entity known as Lucien Dutoit may still be at large and represents a significantly greater threat than we originally realized. Dr. Lowe's insistence that Ion was not the likely creator of SCP-610 has been confirmed, and in a way that is truly terrifying for us all. Who knows how many of the horrific pathogens that have been released upon the world have been the result of Dutoit's meddling. The flesh that hates has the same lethality to everyone, regardless of status, and murdering everyone doesn't fit with Ion's reported desire to free the oppressed. The historical department has always more or less agreed that Ion was generally too benevolent, in his own way, to have created and released a disease like that purely for vengeance. The possibility of someone else being the architect of 610 has always been a theory, but absent a smoking gun, it has remained just a theory. I believe that this is that smoking gun. Attached, please find a transcription of Dr. Forrester's final experiment with SCP-3862. May dissemination of this information bring forth a result that can assuage my guilt. Andreas Gotts. Site Director, Site 54. Then we find a transcript of an audio log. March 12, 2015 at 1:22 p.m. Researcher, Dr. Jamie Forrester. Research Objects, SCP-3862-A, B. C. Dr. Forrester was approved to conduct a single experiment involving all SCP-3862 objects. Strict biological contamination procedures were put into place, and Dr. Forrester conducted the experiment while inside a Class 4 positive pressure biohazard suit. The containment vessels for all three SCP-3862 objects were placed inside Sterile Room Beta, and Dr. Forrester entered the sterile field alone, with Dr. Golzer observing. Begin log. Dr. Forrester enters the airlock for SR Beta and proceeds to dress in his protective suit. Dr. Forrester, mic check. This is Dr. Jamie Forrester, sometime shortly after 1 p.m., March 12th. Dr. Golzer, reading you loud and clear, Jamie. You sure you want to do this? Dr. Forrester finishes final checks on his suit seals and gives a thumbs up to the camera. Dr. Forrester, I have my reservations, but needs must. It is important to gauge exactly how virulent the Sigma pathogen actually is, and you know my opinion on using the D class for stuff like this. Dr. Golzer, fair enough. I'm starting the cycle now, you know the drill. The light above the inner door shifts to amber, then shifts to green, and Dr. Forrester opens it to step through into the testing chamber. The SCP-3862-A and -B containment lockers are situated on a large steel table in the center of the room, with the SCP-3862-C containment locker beside it. Dr. Forrester proceeds to the table and begins the procedure to open C. Dr. Forrester, let's get right to it. Taking the table out first. Short pause. Even after looking at these things as often as I have, I gotta admit that opening them all together is a bit of a rush. Dr. Golzer, it is exciting, that's for sure. Just be careful. Dr. Forrester looks up at the camera and grins through the clear shield. Dr. Forrester, of course. He proceeds to remove -C from its locker and sets it out to the side. Over the next few minutes, he retrieves -A and -B and sets them both on top of C. Dr. Forrester, you know, aside from the whole Sigma pathogen thing, these things are exquisitely made. Hard to believe that they're just bone and hair. He gently caresses the surface of -C. Even monsters can have feelings. He pauses again, then looks up at the camera, his hand still resting on the surface of -C. I think that Lucien really did care about the Marquesa. Dr. Golzer, we've been over this. Dutoit wasn't human anymore. He was only using her to get what he wanted. Dr. Forrester, shaking his head, sure, he had an ulterior motive. But why would he make -B for her, out of his own ribs? That had to have been painful as hell. And the attention to detail. It had to have taken hours, carefully growing each element. He steps to the side and picks up SCP-3862-B, turning it over in his hands. Dr. Forrester, even if it is bone, this represents a level of craftsmanship that... He suddenly drops -B the few inches to the table, and clutches at his right glove. Dr. Golzer, Jamie? Jamie! What's going on? Dr. Forrester turns away from the camera, shaking his head and staring at his right hand. Dr. Golzer, Jamie, answer please. I'm a heartbeat away from dousing that room with the aerosol, fucking. Dr. Forrester, interrupting, quietly, no, Samira. Don't do that. These gloves are over 2 centimeters thick. How? Dr. Golzer, damn it, Jamie. I'm pulling the plug on this. Get out of there now. Dr. Forrester shakes his head and turns back to the camera, holding up his hand. In the center of his palm is a long sliver of bone, piercing directly through the glove. Dr. Forrester, too late, Samira. You know how nasty Sigma is. I can't risk contaminating the rest of the lab. He laughs. Well, I guess we'll see how fast it works now. He coughs wetly and pauses for a moment. Pretty damn fast, I'd say. He pulls off both gloves, then proceeds to remove his helmet, instantly deflating the pressure in his suit. He draws a deep breath and looks up at the camera, a bit of bloody froth at the corner of his mouth. Dr. Forrester, it's been a pleasure working with you, Samira. I want you to know that. Dr. Forrester proceeds to conclude the test schedule on the SCP-3862 objects. In the process, he also collects multiple tissue samples from himself, as well as culture samples of the SCP-3862-Epsilon pathogen itself. Over the course of the next 62 minutes, he is shown to experience the symptoms of rapid-onset necrotizing fasciitis. At 48 minutes, he is no longer capable of conducting the experiment due to the loss of a majority of the tissue on his right arm. He sits down with his back against SCP-3862-C. Dr. Forrester, you know, Samira. He is interrupted by a violent coughing fit, and he spits a mass of something wet onto the floor beside him. I think I figured something out, in all of this. Dr. Golzer, yeah, Jamie? Dr. Forrester, we always cough, we always wondered what happened to Eleanore, and Lucien's baby. He is caught by another coughing fit, and afterwards appears to be incapable of speech. He reaches around behind his head and retrieves one of the sealed petri dishes containing one of the SCP-3862-Epsilon pathogen samples from atop SCP-3862-C. He looks up at the camera and taps urgently on the dish with the exposed bone of his left index finger. End log. At this point, Dr. Forrester lay down on the floor, where he expired 12 minutes later. A post-mortem examination of the room and the SCP-3862-B object revealed no obvious damage or origin point for the sliver that pierced Dr. Forrester's glove. This object has been catalogued as SCP-3862-B, and has been secured along with B.